The Benin Bronzes are not merely beautiful objects. They are the chronicles of a nation, cast in metal. For centuries, these intricate sculptures and plaques adorned the royal palace of the Kingdom of Benin, located in what is now modern-day Nigeria. They were a living archive, telling the stories of its kings, its rituals, and its society. Each piece, from the finely detailed heads of the obas, kings, to the narrative plaques depicting court life, served as a historical document. They were created to honor the ancestors and to record the kingdom's history for future generations. These artifacts were central to the spiritual and political life of the Edo people, representing a sophisticated and ancient civilization long before European powers set foot in the region. This rich cultural heritage was violently interrupted in the winter of 1897. A British delegation, aiming to assert its authority, was ambushed and killed en route to Benin City, providing a pretext for a military response. The British Empire dispatched a force of about 1,200 soldiers on what they called a punitive expedition. This was not just a military campaign, it was an act of overwhelming destruction. The soldiers captured Benin City, setting it ablaze and systematically looting its most sacred spaces. The royal palace, the center of the kingdom's universe, was stripped bare. Thousands of priceless artifacts, the Benin Bronzes among them, were stolen. The soldiers who carried out this act saw the bronzes not as cultural treasures, but as spoils of war. The artifacts were packed up and shipped back to London. This was more than just theft. It was the erasure of a people's memory. Imagine a library, filled with irreplaceable manuscripts detailing the history of a nation, suddenly being ransacked and its contents scattered to the winds. This is what happened to the Kingdom of Benin. The very objects that connected the people to their past, that defined their identity and their relationship with their rulers and gods, were taken from them. The empty palace stood as a painful symbol of a culture that had been plundered. The journey of the Benin Bronzes from their home did not end in London. The British government sold off many of the looted items to cover the costs of the military expedition. This led to a global dispersal of Nigeria's heritage. Museums and private collectors across Europe and North America eagerly purchased the artifacts, marveling at their technical skill and artistic beauty. In doing so, they became custodians of stolen goods. The bronzes, once central to the life of a vibrant African kingdom, were recontextualized as ethnographic curiosities or exotic art pieces in Western institutions, their true meaning and history often ignored or misunderstood by the people who now possessed them. Following the British sale, the Benin Bronzes became scattered across the globe, creating a diaspora of cultural heritage. Major museums in London, Berlin, Vienna, and New York acquired significant collections. While the British Museum held the largest single collection, German museums collectively amassed the second largest. Ethnographic museums in cities like Berlin, Hamburg, Stuttgart, and Cologne became major repositories for these Nigerian treasures. German curators and diplomats were quick to recognize the artistic and historical value of the bronzes, purchasing them from the British auctions and dealers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. For over a century, these objects remained in German display cases, far from their place of origin. For Nigeria, the absence of these artifacts has been a profound and enduring loss. They are not simply works of art, they are integral to the nation's identity and history. The bronzes are a powerful reminder of the advanced civilization that flourished in West Africa before the colonial era. They represent a direct, tangible link to the ancestors of the Edo people and the continuity of their royal lineage. Their return has been a long-standing demand, a call for cultural and historical restoration. For decades, Nigerian officials and cultural leaders have campaigned tirelessly for the repatriation of these stolen treasures, arguing that they belong in Nigeria, where their stories can be told in their original context. The significance of these artifacts cannot be overstated. The detailed plaques, for example, function like a visual record of the kingdom's history, depicting important events, political structures, and religious ceremonies. The commemorative heads of the obas were placed on ancestral altars and were central to the rituals that sustained the kingdom. Without them, a vital part of the Edo people's spiritual and ceremonial life was severed. Their return is therefore not just about regaining property. It is about healing a historical wound and reconnecting a community with its sacred past. It is about restoring a sense of wholeness to a culture that was deliberately fractured by colonial violence. Germany's large collection placed it at the center of the modern debate on restitution. As discussions around colonial legacies intensified globally, German museums and government officials began to confront the uncomfortable history of their collections. They could no longer ignore the fact that these celebrated objects were acquired as a direct result of a violent imperialist act. This growing awareness led to a significant shift in policy. Germany began a process of self-examination, acknowledging that holding on to looted artifacts was morally indefensible. This internal reflection paved the way for a groundbreaking decision to address the historical injustice directly and return what was taken. The culmination of this soul-searching came on July 1st, 2022, a date that will be remembered in the history of cultural restitution. In a landmark ceremony held in Berlin, German and Nigerian officials signed an agreement that marked a turning point. Germany formally committed to transferring ownership of its entire collection of over 1,100 Benin Bronzes to Nigeria. This was not a loan or a temporary gesture, it was a full and permanent return of ownership. The agreement was hailed by Nigeria's Minister of Culture, Lai Mohammed, as the single largest known repatriation of artifacts in the world, signifying a monumental step towards righting a historical wrong that had stood for 125 years. The ceremony was filled with powerful symbolism. To make the transfer of ownership tangible, Germany's Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, and Minister of Culture, Claudia Roth, physically handed over two of the most significant bronzes to their Nigerian counterparts. One was a magnificent 18th century head of an oba, a piece weighing 35 kilograms that once stood on a royal ancestral altar. The other was a 16th century relief plaque depicting an oba flanked by his guards. These two pieces, which had been purchased by a German diplomat from the British in 1898, were the first of many to begin their journey home. The moment was both solemn and celebratory, a public act of atonement. The words spoken by officials underscored the gravity of the occasion. Annalena Baerbock did not mince her words, stating with clarity and conviction, "It was wrong to take the bronzes, and it was wrong to keep them. This is the beginning to right the wrongs." Her statement was a direct admission of guilt, not just for the act of looting, but for the century of possession that followed. It represented a clear break from the justifications and legalistic arguments that have so often been used to retain colonial artifacts. This was an ethical decision, based on a recognition of the fundamental injustice that had been committed against the people of Benin. This agreement sets a new precedent for how nations can deal with the dark legacies of colonialism. While ownership of all 1,100 artifacts has been transferred to Nigeria, the two countries will collaborate on the future of the collection. Some of the bronzes may remain in Germany on long-term loan, allowing German audiences to continue learning from them, but now as guests from Nigeria, not as possessions of Germany. This collaborative model, built on mutual respect and partnership, offers a pathway for other museums and countries to follow. It moves the conversation beyond a simple binary of keeping or returning towards a more nuanced relationship based on shared stewardship and historical truth. Germany's decisive action stands in stark contrast to the position of other institutions, most notably the British Museum. While smaller institutions in Britain, such as Jesus College, Cambridge, and Aberdeen University, have returned their Benin Bronzes, the British Museum, which holds the world's largest collection of about 900 pieces, has refused to do the same. It often cites the British Museum Act of 1963, a law that prohibits it from deaccessioning or permanently returning objects from its collection. This legal barrier is seen by many, especially in Nigeria, as an excuse to avoid a moral obligation. Germany's move has intensified the pressure on the British Museum to find a way to overcome these legal hurdles and follow its lead. The global landscape of restitution is slowly shifting. In the United States, the Smithsonian Institution has also returned its collection of Benin Bronzes to Nigeria. France, too, has taken steps to return artifacts looted from West Africa. These actions are part of a wider global reckoning with the colonial past. Museums are no longer seen as neutral spaces. They are recognized as institutions shaped by the power dynamics of empire. The debate is no longer about whether restitution should happen, but how. Germany has provided a powerful and comprehensive answer to that question, demonstrating that it is possible to confront history honestly and act decisively to correct past injustices. The return of the Benin Bronzes is fundamentally a matter of justice. It is about acknowledging that these objects were stolen, and that the descendants of the people they were stolen from have the right to reclaim them. It is an affirmation of Nigeria's sovereignty and its right to be the custodian of its own cultural heritage. For the Edo people, It is the return of their history, their ancestors, and a part of their soul. It allows them to reconnect with a past that was violently taken and to teach future generations their own history, using their own artifacts, on their own terms. This act helps restore dignity to a people who suffered a great historical trauma. Ultimately, the story of the Benin Bronzes and their return is about more than just museum objects. It is about redefining the relationship between Europe and Africa, moving away from a colonial dynamic towards one of equal partnership. It is a recognition that the cultural treasures of the world do not belong in the museums of former colonial powers simply because they had the force to take them. Germany's historic move is a beacon of hope, suggesting that a future where historical wrongs can be acknowledged and repaired is possible. The journey of the Benin Bronzes is not yet over, but they are finally on their way home.